Hey, welcome to Monday Morning Marriage Minute. And yes, it's a Tuesday morning, but it's just been that kind of week. I apologize for being a day late, but I think it'll be worth it today as we hang in there and we keep going. Besides, I got my coffee, I've got my notes, I'm ready to roll. So here's the deal. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel and to pass it on to friends and family. And keep sending your questions in to 1minutemarriage@gmail.com. I'll keep answering your questions. Might take a few days because we're kind of getting bombarded now, but I will answer them, I promise. So we've been going on this trajectory route of pornography and its effects on relationships, people, the human brain. And so today I want to cover kind of the last piece about how it affects the human brain. And then next week I want to talk about how it affects your sex life as a man and or a woman in a relationship, specifically marriage. But again, it'll affect any relationship you're in when you're in that world of pornography, which is a dark and scary and treacherous world. So one of the things I like to do is I like to take what happens to our physical body when we talk about scars or things that happen to us, and I like to apply it to how that affects us also emotionally or mentally. So one of the things is that when we look at pornography, there's something that happens to our subconscious, and I kind of want to, again, go back to how things affect us emotionally and mentally. So when we took a look at different types of cuts or things that scar our body, the first one that we see is a basic abrasion, which you fall, a rug burn, or you hit the cement and you get a scrape. And almost always those are infected, but it's a mild grade infection. Our body's able to overcome it. And I look at those things that emotionally or mentally are sometimes words that are spoken over us that affect changes in our psyche, in our mind, in our emotions. There's mild scarring going on, but typically if we're raised in a healthy environment, we can overcome that. The second type is an incision, which there is a cut by a knife or a sharp object. And what happens is usually there's a lot of blood. It bleeds pretty freely. There's a very definitive scar that takes place on the skin. But I kind of tie that to how things can affect us emotionally or mentally in life by life disappointments or problems, issues at work or health, things like that we are able to get through, but it definitely leaves a mark, a visible mark that when we interact with people that are close to us, they can see that there was a scar there. Now, it doesn't mean it left you unhealthy. It just means that it definitely affects your emotional well-being and your mental well-being. The third type of scarring that we see in our body is through a laceration. And this is a deep, deep wound or a gashing of the skin. And I see this as beyond step one, which was just careless words. These are deep and meaningful, hurtful words. These are things that are spoken specifically to try to hurt us. And so those things can scar us emotionally and mentally, and they can definitely leave a negative impact, and it takes much more time to overcome those emotionally and mentally the same way in our physical body when we have a deep gash or a deep cut. Because remember, a deep cut goes beyond the skin, it goes to the internal organs. So there's a lot more healing that needs to take place. So we see that. Number 4, we see punctures where there are definite nails or wires or objects stuck deep inside of us, and it might be small, but it's very, very deep, and that can affect us physically many different ways, from internal bleeding. We don't always see the effects right away, and that's why it's so dangerous. And with that, I see that words from parents or loved ones. I mean, these are words that are spoken over us by someone who really, really maybe loves us or is really close to us, and they may not even realize what they're saying. And here's the sad thing. Not until we're older do we realize what they said and what it did to us. That's that deep internal puncture where sometimes we look back and we didn't even realize that was wrong or what they said was so hurtful until we see now how it modified our behavior or our mindset. The last two would be avulsions, which is a tearing away of the flesh. And that's scars that affect us emotionally and mentally, like a divorce or a death. Those are things that are definitive by nature in our history, and we look at those and we go, wow, that really affected me. And last but not least are traumatic amputations, meaning a tearing away of the limb in an accident or where you have to have something surgically removed. and it is very traumatic. It changes everything. It changes your behavior. It changes your mindset. It changes how people look at you. It changes how you look at others. And that is the emotional and mental scarring that takes place on the brain when we have things such as sexual abuse, physical abuse, and here's the scary one, pornography. When we view pornography on a regular basis, we have that deep traumatic amputation effect on our psyche, on our brain, on our emotions, on our mental state. And what it does is it leaves a traumatic, definitive mark that we now deal with in and out, in and through all relationships that we're involved in, but specifically relationships with those that we love and want to be connected to in a one-on-one type relationship such as marriage. So when we see how these things affect us in our physical body, and we translate that and see how things affect us in our emotional and mental body, we see that the worst one in our physical body is that traumatic amputation. And that's the worst thing about pornography, is it is traumatic, and it is the worst thing you can do to your mental and emotional psyche. So, problem with this is that pornography, with this great deep amputation type effect on our psyche, it releases a chemical called delta phos B, and that's kind of the chemical, the governor that kind of regulates all the other chemicals and hormones in our brain. Now I'm going to make this as simple and quick as possible because it can get overwhelming, but basically what happens is, like any addict, what happens is the delta phos B and the effects of pornography cause you to want more so that you can have that high. But the problem is you go from tolerance to sensitization, which means basically this. You are doing a drug, whether it's something you drink, snort, inject, shoot, or pornography, and there's a high at first. But over time, that high becomes tolerant, and now you have to take more drugs. And you talk to any addict, and they'll tell you quickly that they're taking more drugs, not for more of a high, not even to get high, but they're taking more drugs just to feel normal. Here's the danger when you get into a relationship and you've had a steady diet of pornography. You need pornography just to feel normal in the relationship. You need to treat that person as an object the same way you look at pornography as an object. And all the things and all the ways that you interact with pornography, you now take those into that relationship, and that's why it's so dangerous. And now pornography basically just becomes a drug that helps you feel normal every day. The scary thing is that the effects of pornography, much like drugs, they have a physical, lasting impact on your brain. It's very hard to go back because your brain, neuroplasticity, actually changes. And so the recovery process can be monstrous. It can be huge. We'll talk more about that next week and the week after that. But again, next week specifically, we're going to talk about how pornography affects your view in relationships sexually, with the opposite sex when you are involved in pornography. And again, women, you might think that mostly men deal with pornography, but I'm going to challenge you next week in that women have dealt with pornography far longer than men have, and we'll talk about the effects that that has had as well. So, Monday Morning Marriage Minute on a Tuesday. So thanks for tuning in. Please share this video with your friends. Subscribe. Keep your questions coming to oneminutemarriage@gmail.com. I will continue to answer your questions as best I can and as thoroughly as possible. Have a great day. Enjoy the holiday season. And remember to spend time with your best friend because you're married to him. We'll see you.